24 says second quadrant and sine of alpha equals 2/3 and cosine of beta equals -1/3. So if I draw in a triangle here and I call it alpha and the sine is 2/3, then Pythagorean theorem would make what, 9 minus 4, this would be the square root of 5, but it would be negative. Is that true?
Yeah.
So yesterday I drew it on the same picture. It's kind of hard to draw beta with the same picture here, but it can be in the same quadrant, just different sides. So just draw another picture for your beta angle, or you have to just draw like a really big triangle out there. I don't know how you want to do it. But cosine would be -1/3. So Pythagorean theorem 9 minus 1 would be the square root of 8, or that would be 2 square root of 2. Is that true? Can you do Pythagorean theorem in your head?
A squared plus b squared.
So if I know the hypotenuse in one leg, I just take this squared minus this squared, and the square root of that. So like 9 minus 1 equals this side squared.
Yeah, just stays the hypotenuse.
Right, and this one was 9 minus 4 square root of 5. I told Mrs. Hodge that what you said about a kid teaching you how to do fractions, and I should be proud of you. And she said, he's probably going to IU. Her little mean joke today about hating.
Actually, I'm going to IU South.
Just because Purdue beat IU last night. So she's like out of control with her IU jokes today.
Oh my God, the Arthur Lee was Jonas Sanders are getting the heater right now. That was hilarious. He was like, and you're like, yeah, we're gonna be, Dan, are you on the team? Yeah, I'll talk about that.
And so if you can draw your triangles, you agree that then you just use the formula and you just plug all that stuff in. I don't really know that I need to work all this out. I'll do this one.
Yeah.
So that would be sine of alpha cosine of beta minus cosine of alpha sine of beta. So that would be 2/3 times -1/3. And then cosine would be negative square root of 5/3. And sine of beta would be, yeah, these are really ugly answers, 2 radical 2/3. This is what the question asks us to find. Like it says, given this information.
It says A plus.
On 24? That's easy to fix. Not really that big a deal to change because I just changed my sign. So I get multiplying -2/9 minus 2 radical 10/9, which would be, you could, exact answer would be you could just write it like this, or you could type that in your calculator, but you can just type in your calculator, what's the point of even doing it, right? That would be the exact answer with the radicals. But again, drawing the picture is super important. And then it asks you to find cosine also, and again, it's just using the formulas. And then to do part C, what quadrant contains A minus B? Well, if sine is negative, already I know I'm either in quadrant 3 or quadrant 4. How do I know which one? It depends on what cosine of A minus B ended up. Okay, I'm not going to do this whole thing because otherwise we're never going to get to our notes. But hopefully Monday we'll be here full time, all day. It's hot, so we're getting a bunch of snow this weekend. And Mr. Scott says it's going to be super cold next week. So I am ignoring what they're saying and crushing Mrs. Hodge's dreams of having snow days next week. But she said, it says 4 to 8 inches on Saturday. And I said, Mrs. Hodge, they've lied to us all year.
Yeah, well,
It's not going to be 4 to 8
it's
inches.
just an advisory, but I don't know it's
Mrs.
percent
Dixon's
anymore.
outside with the portable heater just right.
No.
Melts everything.
I'm so over it. Like yesterday's day have been nice. I don't lie. I've had a sharpen this one. Just some more formulas to use, and remember, that's the rough part, right? So, these are called double angle formulas. Notice because it's like sine of 2u, you cannot separate the 2 from the u, but you can rewrite that as 2 sine of u cosine of u. And then cosine of 2u, super annoyingly, you can write it 3 different ways. Do you need to memorize all 3 ways? No. But sometimes it's like you were doing a proof one way is sometimes better than the other. But I'm going to kind of show you that they're all the same thing. It's just different versions of the same thing. So the one they say first is cosine of 2u is cosine squared u minus sine squared u. And then they just do some lovely Pythagorean theorem stuff to get these other 2 versions. So remember that cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1, right? So let's say you wanted to write this just in terms of sines or cosines. You could substitute in for sine squared or cosine squared using that formula. Do you agree with me? So that's where these other 2 versions come from. I would say just memorize the first one. But we could say cosine squared is the same as 1 minus sine squared. So think about if I replace this cosine with 1 minus sine squared, you agree that that would just become 1 minus 2 sine squared u? Because I'd have minus sine squared minus sine squared. And then the other version of this, what if you solved for sine squared? You'd have 1 minus cosine squared u. No, did I do that wrong? Oh yeah, I won. Right. Well, oh yeah. So if this was negative, then this would change to negative and a positive, or you could just distribute that negative when you plugged it in. But either way, you would end up with cosine squared and cosine squared, which is 2 cosine squared and then minus 1. So that's where those this one and this one come from. I've already looked ahead to what's on your test, and you don't have to know all 3. If you just know one of those, whichever one seems the easiest for you to remember, you'll be fine. All right? But they give you all 3, so I just wanted to show you that that's where they all come from, because they're just using the Pythagorean identity there. And then tangent's always a fraction, right? Just like the sum of difference one, is 2 tangent u over 1 minus tangent squared u. You do need to know these along with the sum difference formulas that I've given you from 7.3. And then Monday, there's the other formulas in this section that we need to know. And so maybe we can make some flashcards. Jake showed us in 5th hour yesterday this cool little Quizlet app. Maybe we can make a Quizlet for college algebra that we can practice in here. And then maybe you can find it on your mobile device or computer at home and study these, because you really need to memorize these. There are questions on your test that pretty much just want you to basically regurgitate these formulas. Like rewrite cosine of 2u, and maybe they'll say 2x. Like you just have to memorize them. You don't have to do anything but know what it equals. Does that make sense? So, regurgitate. Well, I just mean like you're not applying any knowledge except for memorization, right? Like that's what I mean by regurgitate. So maybe not the best word choice, but. So let's just do an example here. It says if sine of alpha equals 4/5, and if alpha is an acute angle, find the exact values of sine of 2a, cosine of 2a, and tangent of 2a. Which means, again, just like the ones from yesterday, if they give you a sine value and they tell you where it is, like in this case, they tell me it's an acute angle, which means it has to be in quadrant 1, so it's all positive. You could draw a lovely little triangle here. And if the sine is 4/5, then we know we could label it like that. And what's this side going to be? 3, right? You've learned that 3, 4, 5 triangle now. Or you can do Pythagorean theorem and get that. Which means if you have your triangle, you can find all the trig values. But now you're going to use these new formulas. So to find sine of 2 alpha, that's just equal to 2 sine of alpha cosine of alpha. If you know the formula, now you just plug in the values and you can get that numerical answer. But you gotta memorize that. The sine one is the one I know best. And so I'm just gonna plug that in. The sine of alpha using my triangle is 4/5. The cosine would be 3/5. And remember, you can multiply on your calculator. By multiplying fractions, you just do top times top, bottom times bottom. So 2 times 4 is 8, times 3 is 24, and 5 times 5 is 25. Aaron's been practicing this with his middle school kids. Oh, I don't know. Mr. Puckett's stressed. Like, that's why Mr. Puckett's very worried about how we're going to do this year. So. He should. I mean, I don't know what he's predicting, but I know he's worried.
See, all the kids in my group are really smart. One's really slow. Like,
Yeah, I know.
working it, but she's super smart. I don't even have to sit there and teach them anything. I just watch them do it.
So, again, it's up to you on which one you want to use on this one, right? We should get the same answer no matter which one we use. Do you want to just use the first one? Do you want to use the one, like, the other two versions have just a sine or a cosine in it, but order does matter on this, right? Because it's cosine squared alpha minus sine squared alpha. How do I evaluate a trig function that's squared? Like, how do I do cosine squared alpha? You know? Yeah, so cosine squared is the same as saying cosine alpha and then you square it. So you still can use your triangle, and the cosine was 3/5. And then you just square that whole value. And the sine is still 4/5. And then you just square that whole value. So that's what you do when you have a trig function squared. So that would be 9/25 minus 16/25. Very nicely, already have the same denominator. So cosine of 2 alpha would be what? Negative 7/25. Again, on the test, if you don't know these formulas, that's going to be bad news, right? Don't know the formula, it's hard to just wing it. Tangent is the one I'm the least confident about right now in terms of memorizing, because I haven't done it in a while. 2 tangent alpha over 1 minus tangent squared. And so again, using my picture up here, tangent would be 4/3 over 1 minus 4/3 squared. Minus 16/9 would be negative 7/9. I'm just doing all this on your calculators. 8/3 multiply the reciprocal up, write a fraction and a fraction.
Keep it changing a little bit.
So 24 over negative 7. Did you get that? I could be wrong. Don't trust me. That's right? Okay. I thought I heard someone say something different. Yeah. That's what you're expected to do on your test for this stuff, being able to do that. Oh yeah, look about that. Tangent of 2 alpha equal sine of 2 alpha over cosine of 2 alpha? Would that work? So he had 24 over 25ths and negative 7 over 25ths. Yeah, that would work.
There we go.
I know, but you're thinking. That's what we're saying. You can think through it. That's why you're on math team.
Don't do it.
You already said yes, Nick. No take backs. I gave you the stuff.
I took a packet.
You took a packet. That's.
If we can.
Wait, didn't Oliviero take a packet? No, it counts.
Don't blame it on Ted, he's Italian.
He doesn't understand.
No.
I don't know. I haven't asked him.
I'll talk to him 6 times.
But
I can talk to him fifth hour.
What?
so, what if I threw in solve the equation with something like this? Some people like to say, oh, sine of 2t plus sine of t, we can just write that as sine of 3t, right?
But you can't.
Yeah, we shouldn't do that. So, this is where they could give you problems to solve or proofs to do, where they now expect, just like with the sum and difference, if you see this, automatically you should think about rewriting it using the property. So I could rewrite this as 2 sine of t cosine of t. Children, please stop talking. Then we can just pull out a sine. I've done this a while, right? This is what we did on our last quiz, those last 2 questions. Plus 1 equals 0. And notice they say give all the answers between 0 and 2 pi. So you don't have to do the plus 2 pi in. You just have to tell me where does sine of t equal 0 and where does 2 cosine of t plus 1 equal 0, which would be like saying where does cosine equal negative 1/2. And then once again we go back to our unit circle or our special angles that you have to know where do these functions equal these values. So sine is the y value, so what values have a sine of 0? 0 and pi. Angel, 2 pi is also true, but look at the way the notation is. 0 is included, 2 pi isn't. I'm with you. And where does cosine equal negative 1/2? Cosine is x. So yeah, so pi thirds is the 1/2. So it's negative at 2 pi thirds and 4 pi thirds. So they could give you proofs or they could give you equations that now have these multiple angle identities in them, like just like the sum and difference ones. That's pretty much it. There's other angles. There's other formulas that if it was a full day, I could have done this whole section in one day called half angle identities that that we will be using that you also have to memorize. So I think that's like 3 separate formulas that you have to know besides just like the basic Pythagorean identities. That you're going to have to know the sum and difference. You're going to have to know the double angle, and you're going to have to know the half angle identities when we have our quiz and test next week. No cheat sheet allowed. This is 7-4 day 1. We have another quiz coming up after 7-4. So we'll finish 7-4 next week. We'll do a review day, and then we'll have a quiz. And then we're getting close to our next test. I think we skipped 7-5 in here in this chapter, and then 7-6 is all we have left, which is inverse trig. And then we'll be ready for a test. So we definitely should have chapter 7 test before spring break. And then I think there's 2 tests after spring break and a final. So we're flying right through this, kids. What time do we got here? 1:24.